Censorship. Warning. Censorship. Warning.
Oh, hi everybody, Ezra Levant here. How you doing? It's Monday, February 22nd. As you know, every day at 12 noon Eastern time, we have a 1-hour live stream. We go through the stories of the day, little video clips, things that we didn't really have a chance to go deep on in our more produced segments. On Mondays, obviously, we talk about things that happen over the weekend. And the fun part is you get your say in the chats to the side of the window there. And you can make those chats super by chipping in a few bucks. It makes your chat brightly colored and affixed to the top of the window for a duration commensurate with your spending. We like those because YouTube lets us have 70% of that revenue, and it's a good way for us to offset the demonetization. There's so many things that happened over the weekend, both in Canada and around the world. We had such a team effort on display yesterday and over the weekend. We had reporters covering the Toronto lockdown protests. David was there, Mocha was there. The Mocha and Lincoln hopped on a plane, went to Edmonton, where the Grace Life Church west of the city was opening despite the fact, or maybe because of the fact, or maybe regardless of the fact, that their pastor, James Coates, was arrested and has now been in jail, I think it's 6 days. You would think this would be national headlines, international headlines, that 6 days in a row now, a Christian pastor has been imprisoned in the maximum security Edmonton Remand Center, which is where murderers go. It's actually, I think it's the largest prison in Canada. I was talking to James Kitchen, the lawyer for the pastor, and we were talking about Edmonton Remand Center. When I was a baby lawyer, I articled as a lawyer in Edmonton, and one of my first jobs was serving a court order, an injunction, a restraining order it was called, on a prisoner in jail. I know that seems funny. Why would you serve a restraining order on someone who's already in jail? But I did. So I went to the Edmonton Remand Center. It was dingy. It was dirty. It was scary. I was slightly scared. The prisoner was brought towards me, and I served him with the papers. I had to hand it to him. He was a violent man. And nothing happened to me. We had no conversation other than, are you so-and-so? Here you go. And then I would walk out of there. That was one of my jobs as a baby lawyer, as an articling student. You don't want to be in a remand center. That's basically where you get swept off the streets, and if you are violent, that's where you go until the legal system has a proper disposition for you. It is not a nice place. So a new remand center opened up a couple years ago. I think it's the largest one in Canada, and that is where the pastor sits. And I think it's day 6. And you might think, well, that would deter the church from opening. But indeed it did not. You have some of those vids, Lincoln or Sheila might have tweeted it, of the church being absolutely packed yesterday. In fact, they did turn people away, but only because there were no seats left. And they had an overflow room where people watched on a TV screen. And when that was full, people were outside in the parking lot listening to the live stream of the presentation inside. I think it may be the case that they had their largest attendance ever yesterday. Now, we sent a whole squad out there. Sheila was there, obviously, our chief reporter. A young lad named Daniel. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. That's the parking lot. Look at that. So you got the entire parking lot full, and then you can see 2 rows there in the snow. Now, I don't know if that's a parking lot or sort of a homemade parking lot. That's a lot of cars. That looks like a industrial type building, but that's the church. Check out the packed house at Grace Life today. So many people that many had to stay outside and listen from their cars. Lots of support. So look at that. Now, of course, if that were a Costco or a Walmart, No, cops wouldn't care. Cops would go in and do some shopping. Now, do you have some viz? I think Lincoln took it. Yeah, look at that from the inside. So this is just the overflow room, right? You can see the pastor on the TV there. So these are people who are, it's too busy for them to be in the main congregation, so they're in this overflow room. And do you have one from Lincoln? I think he had one of the cops and the media and whatever, like in a ditch or something. I was told there were 7 police or Alberta Health vehicles there. Yeah, so you can see, I think that yeah, so those I think are journalists from mainstream media who are wearing their masks and they're like in the ditch. Yeah, there's a cop car there, and I don't know what that vehicle is, but very busy. Looks like a lovely place. It looks cold, I know, but I understand the weather got up a few degrees into the positive side of the register, so I heard it was actually quite a nice day. You know, I was boring everybody with my recollection of what I learned in high school about Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and the observer effect. The way I was taught it in physics was, let's say you have a drawer in your desk, and Justin, you tell me if I'm making any sense here. You got a drawer in your desk, and it's got a die or a pair of dice in them, right? So but it's closed, so you don't know what the dice say. You open the drawer to see what the dice say, but the dice rolled because you opened the drawer. So the fact that you observed them changed them. That's an example of the observer effect. I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to sound dumber than I am. I just remember that. I remember learning about that in high school physics way back. This would have been in the last century. Quantum physics is 100 years old, but I always thought about that. When you observe something, it's almost like a philosophical question, like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear, did it make a sound? Now, Einstein said, I know the moon exists whether or not I look at it. Let's not be silly. But I put it to you, and talking with our whole team, we had Sheila and Lincoln and young Daniel in Edmonton. And in Calgary, we had Kian and Mocha. I believe our presence and our coverage of Pastor James, by the way, we got a website called freepastorjames.com. Can you show me if we have what the count there is? Because I sort of announced that without much fanfare on like Friday night or something. How many folks? 3,705 signatures. Let's see if we can get that up to 4,000. Like I just tweeted that out. We haven't even done an email. We haven't even done anything, and we got 3,705. Let's see if we can get that up to 4,000. Pastor James Coates of Grace Life Church remains behind bars today. That's insane. I think today's day 6. I'll have to check. Anyways, back to the story. So Lincoln, Sheila, and young Daniel were in Edmonton. Kian and Mocha were in Calgary. I believe that our coverage gave the church some courage, if I may. I'm not looking to take credit. I'm just saying I think that it was a factor. And when Sheila and Daniel and Lincoln were there with the cameras, I think maybe the cops thought, well, look, what are we going to do, arrest 350 people? And what are the visuals of us handcuffing grannies and grandpas and kids? And I should remind you that it's actually a criminal code violation to disturb a religious assemblage. So it would actually be a crime for Alberta Health Services to barge into a church. That's actually a crime in Canada, and I'm glad it is actually. So that was Edmonton, but in Calgary there was another church, and I'm sorry, I just forgot the name of the church. Another church that was inspired by the Edmonton area church, and it opened yesterday too. Now, do we have any viz from that, or are we not quite ready with that yet? Not quite ready. Okay, so I was out here in Toronto following on my phone. We got 5 guys and gals in action. I had contemplated going out there, but you know, the young team was eager to do that, and maybe I should have gone. But I really enjoyed following with everyone on my phone. And Kian and Mocha sent me video of them interacting with Alberta Health Services. So we're talking about the Calgary church now that was inspired by the Edmonton church. So Kian and Mocha are there, and 2 vans of enforcement agents pull up. Do we have any vids of that? Maybe Kian tweeted it. And so when Kian and Mocha approach the Alberta Health Services enforcement van, they run away. And I don't think I'm giving anything away. The footage is what's golden. And they skedaddled. They got in their cars and skedaddled. Yeah. So I think that's the church. Oh, so Mocha's tweeted that. So this is from the drone. So you see, can you replay this? Sorry, I was looking down when this started. So this is Calgary. Yeah, so this is the parking lot of the church. Freeze there, what's the name of that church? Something Baptist Church? Fairview Baptist Church. All right, so it's not as large a church as Edmonton. The church in Edmonton was very large. Would you agree? Maybe, I wouldn't call it a mega church, but I call it big. So there's the church. There's someone at the door. Now here's a drone shot. When Kian and Mocha came out, so the drone is now overhead. Oh, is there any more in there, or did that cut off? Yeah, play it. So now this is showing you where those vehicles ran. You see the church there? That's the church there. It's not a big church. It's a small community church. I see 15 cars altogether. Right? Maybe 20, and I think this may have been after the church service. Yeah, it looks like there's a few more there. Yeah. So thanks very much. So just to explain what you saw there, and that's just a little clip that I think Mocha or Kian tweeted over the weekend. When Kian and Mocha emerged from the church to ask questions of the health cops, they got in their white vans and ran away to that parking lot a block and a half away. Mocha deployed the Rebel drone, and I've seen the footage, we haven't published it yet, coming right on down low and scanning, surveilling the surveyors, spying on the spies. And one of them leaned out of his truck and took a picture of the drone. That made me feel great. And the whole thing, we've talked about it before. You want to put the poster up? I won't ask you to play the trailer, although maybe I will. Have we ever played the trailer to Lives of Others? The Lives of Others. It's a movie. We've talked about it, I know that is about the East German Stasi. So under Nazi Germany, it was called the Gestapo, which by memory is the Geheime Staatspolizei. Sorry if I'm not remembering the pronunciation of that. And then the Gestapo, which was the Nazi secret police, was replaced by the Stasi, which I think stands for like the Staatssicherheit something. The Lives of Others. So that guy in the top there, you can see he's got the headphones on. His job was to spy on his fellow citizens and the intrigues and the denunciations and the informants. Academy Award winner. I didn't know that. You know what? Absolutely justified. Justin, I gave you a movie tip last week. You followed up on it. Justin saw Apollo 11. He said it was great. This movie, emotionally very different. Apollo 11, exhilarating, thrilling, patriotic, dramatic. This movie, dark, sad, historical, infuriating. But a great movie, and I feel like we don't have enough movies or anything really in pop culture properly documenting the evil of the Soviet regime. You know, after the fall of Nazi Germany, which was a total surrender, right? Hitler killed himself. The Red Army crushed everything in its path. It was like Genghis Khan or Tamerlane, excuse me. We've talked about Tamerlane before, right? Tamerlane, who killed 5% of the people in the world. Did we talk about that before? Like, Mao Zedong killed more people than anyone else in history. But he did so in the 20th century when the world's population was, 4 billion when he did it, 3 billion. But Tamerlane killed a larger proportion of people than anyone else in recorded history. And the Red Army, when it marched west to recapture first Mother Russia, and then into Germany itself, and then on to Berlin, was one of the bloodiest war machines, and the mass rapes and the absolute pulverization of Germany. And I have no sympathy for the Nazis, of course, I'm a Jew myself, but the cruelty and vengeance of that Red Army was quite something. Tamerlane, it's estimated his armies killed, what does that say, 17 million people, which was about 5% of the global population. Yeah, that's Tamerlane. I had never heard of Tamerlane before until, you remember the Tsarnaev brothers who the terrorists, and I think they were the Boston bombers, right? The two brothers, one was named, they were the Tsarnaevs. Do you remember that at all? One was Jakar Tsarnaev. The other was Tamerlane. And I thought, what's that name? I had never heard that name before. Maybe I'm historically illiterate. I looked it up, I studied a bit. The two brothers, am I getting the names right? They were Tamerlane and Zakar Tsarnaev. They were the Boston bombers. And then there was a hunt to chase them down, and they were in a boat and whatever. One of them was named Tamerlane. And I thought, who was that? The world's, the two brothers. Rolling Stone put the one on the right on the cover. They tried to turn him into some sort of sex symbol. The murderers and terrorists. So was it Jakar on the left and Tamerlane on the left rather? Doesn't, yeah? Yeah, that's what I meant to say. So they named him, his mama named him after history's worst killer. Maybe, Shakespeare said, what's in a name? Anyway, we've gone a bit far afield, but my point is, we have gone quite far, haven't we? We talked about a lot of things there. I'm hearing we have some footage from inside the church. Which church? The one in Edmonton or Grace? Here, we're just going to, so this is, we were inside the church there. Looks quite full. We were the only media granted access because we're the only media they trusted not to lie about them and denounce them. Normal people living normally. I'm sure if someone wanted a mask, they'd put it on. If you don't want a mask, how about we all choose our own fear level? My whole point about Mao and Tamerlane and all those things, we didn't properly extirpate the communist ideology from the world after the fall of the Berlin Wall. After the fall of Nazi Germany, there was a denazification. Have you ever heard that word? Denazification. Because Germany, which was, is, and will be a great country, so many of its leaders were corrupted by the Nazi ideology. So since America and the Allies did not want to rule Germany permanently, they wanted to set up a civil government. I mean, it was governed by the U.S. military, just like Japan was governed by the U.S. military, but then it had a liberal constitution, and they wanted to give Japan back to the Japanese. They wanted to give Germany back to the Germans. In Japan, the ideology of fascist expansionism suffered a moral crisis with the loss of the war. But Nazism infected a lot of the German ruling class. And so there were denazification efforts. Some were propaganda, some were educational, but some were simply saying, you were a Nazi, you can't rule the post-Nazi era. It's sort of like after the Allies took out Saddam Hussein, there was a de-Baathification. That was the party of Saddam Hussein. Now, what happens when all the competent managers in a jurisdiction were part of the old regime? That's one of the things in the U.S. South after the Civil War, when all the leading men of intelligence, ambition, skill, experience, wisdom, military ability, leadership, charisma, when they were all Confederates, how do you let the South rule itself? There was a tension there. I'm not an expert in American Civil War and Reconstruction, obviously, but you see the similar issue. So after, and of course, the Allies, they wanted to get their hands on the Nazi secrets. Werner von Braun, who had developed the V-1 and V-2 rockets, there was a race to get the Nazi scientists because it was evident that the Soviet Union and the Western Allies were going to be at loggerheads. So I don't think Werner von Braun himself was particularly a Nazi. I think he was more a rocket scientist than anything. But what do? Do you say to someone, you were in the Nazi party, you can never do anything again? Well, who's going to run the country? Who's going to give you the rocket science secrets? So it's a tension there. But my point is there was an effort to denazify Germany. Was there ever an effort to decommunistify the Eastern Bloc after the fall of communism? Were there, like in South Africa, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission? At least to have people say their piece. Were there, like in Germany, the Nuremberg trials where war criminals were put on trial? The fall of the Berlin Wall, there were a few tyrants in the East who were killed, hung, strung up, whatever. But there was no wholesale de-communistification in the former Soviet bloc, and there was not the concomitant discrediting of communism in the West. In fact, if anything, being a communist in American academia, British academia, only got stronger. If I remember, when I was in high school, my high school English teacher, Al McRae, had a belt buckle with a hammer and sickle on it. He thought it was cool, he thought it was edgy, and he was a commie. Would he have a swastika on it? Who killed more people? There was a kid in our high school class who was a refugee from some communist regime in Southeast Asia. I wonder how he felt about this teacher, Al McRae, wearing a hammer and sickle belt buckle. Do you see what I mean about denazification? Not only did they extirpate the Nazis themselves, but they discredited the ideology. There was no analogous discrediting of communism, either in the Soviet bloc or in the West, and I think there's a big problem there. And here we come now with more snitches and snoops and informants and surveillors and gulags for political prisoners. What is Pastor James Coates other than a political prisoner? He's not a violent man. He has his church open. The churches were allowed to open. The churches were under Soviet control. They were limited in what they can do. Churches, synagogues, mosques, they had them all in the Soviet Union. But they were not completely closed. I know that because I had a friend from the former Soviet Union who was Jewish, and he told me about the very minimal interactions they had with the synagogue and the restrictions put on the synagogue by the KGB, but they didn't shut it down. Unless I'm misremembering what he said. Let's get to the super chats. That was a bit of a roundabout there, wasn't it? All right, let's whip through some of these Pink Phoenix Nails, happy belated birthday, King Ezra. Thanks very much. You know what? I've been more than halfway there for a long time. I think I got 5 good years to do what I got to do. You know, I'm getting the Joe Biden moments. Today we had a staff meeting. I said, hey, has this guy had his comment? Yeah, he already made a statement. You know, I'm getting these Joe Biden moments. I got 5 years left, people. Therese Pollard, $5. Keep up the great work. Thank you. Gabe C. Is there any chance of having a team of reporters in Atlantic, Canada in the future? Well, let's start with one, right? What makes a rebel reporter? I'll tell you what doesn't make it. You do not have to have a journalism degree. You don't have to have a degree at all. I got to tell you, I mean, I know for a fact, just because I know it, that David Menzies, I think, had a journalism degree like 30 years ago. And I'm sure it helped him, or at least put him on track, but that is not what makes David a great journalist. I know Sheila does not have a journalism degree. Kian does not. I do not. Tamara Ugolini does not. I don't think Drea Humphrey does. I don't think Andrew Chapados does. I don't think Raheel Raza does. I don't think Avi Yamini does. I'm just thinking so the one thing I've got to tell you is, I don't look for a journalism degree. In fact, if you have a journalism degree, I got some questions for you. Like, did you learn ideology and the wrong ideology that you have to unlearn? Second thing is, do you have to be a working journalist? You know, I just saw today an application by someone who used to be with Legacy Media, who's interested in our position in Montreal. I'm going to check him out. But I think you have to unlearn your obedience. If you worked at CBC, CTV, Global, a mainstream newspaper, I'm not saying that makes you a bad person in any way, but I want to know if you've been trained to lose your curiosity, trained to lose your contrariness. I want to know if you've been trained to be obedient and submissive, because that's how those go along to get along corporate media operate, especially in the age of bailouts and subsidies. So again, you do not have to have worked for a legacy media company, and if you do, I need to satisfy myself that you're not just a stenographer for power. So what does make a rebel journalist, whether you're in the Atlantic or anywhere? Well, our very first motto, our first slogan when Rebel News was born 6 years and 2 weeks ago, 6 years and 1 week ago, was fearless. That was our first motto, because you can't be afraid to ask questions of anyone. You can't be afraid to ask questions that will make that powerful person dislike you. Fearless. Talk about subjects that aren't woke. Talk about subjects, say words that you're not even allowed to say. Like, I don't think you're allowed to say Wuhan virus, even though that's how we name viruses. Ebola, Spanish flu, German measles. We name viruses after where they came from or where they were most famously associated with. But you can't say that about Wuhan or the Chinese. So I need to know that you're not afraid of those things. Are you a storyteller? Are you naturally curious? Do you have a BS detector? Those are all things that I don't even know if you learn them in journalism school. Let me close by saying the number one thing I tell people who email me and say, hey, I'd like to be a reporter for you. And they send a resume, maybe, and a cover letter, maybe. I say, appreciate the resume and cover letter. Now I know a little bit more about you as a personality, but can I see your work? Can you put together a short 2 or 3 minute video, even on your cell phone or your webcam, showing me what you would look like in action, showing me how you talk, showing me how you think, showing me what subject you choose, showing me what facts you rely on, showing me your tone of voice, showing me what you look like on camera, showing me what you sound like. Because we're primarily a video medium. So I want to see that. And I'm surprised at how many times I invite people to do a really short video like that and I don't hear back at all. And sometimes I hear back and it's good stuff, but it's not a fit for us. So in closing, I am interested in a reporter in the Atlantic. We are not right now explicitly hiring for there. We're looking for someone in Ottawa and Montreal. They're much larger centers. Montreal's not too far away from the Atlantic, though. I would like someone based in Halifax, ideally. And I will be candid and tell you I don't have a big network out there. I'm a Western boy originally, and I have experience in Ontario. But if you know someone in the Atlantic, self-starter, because they're going to be working on their own out there. You're a reporter in Halifax for Rebel News, you're going to be on your own. You'll have the team support here. Well, we have 2 Skype calls a day with the whole team. You'll be supported, but you will be operating. I mean, Sheila operates on her own 90% of the time anyways. So you got to be a self-starter like Sheila. You got to have a nose for news. You got to have the courage to challenge the incumbents. So yeah, I'd be interested. MEC, $5. Happy belated birthday, Ezra. Thank you for all you do. Love Rebel. Thank you for that. Aaron Yallop, $5. I love Rebel almost as much as I love my wife. Keep up the amazing work. Well, I'm really glad you said you love her more. That's a good thing. Alex, $5. Does the Charter of Rights exist anymore, or is violence now the supreme authority under the regime of Little Potato? The Charter of Rights does exist, and emergency legislation is not exempt from the Charter. Now, our Charter has a wiggle room, Section 1, that says infringements on our fundamental freedoms have to be demonstrably justifiable in a free and democratic society. But who determines if it's demonstrably justifiable other than the judges? And judges by nature are creatures of the establishment. And I think in the pandemic over the last 11 months, we've seen that the establishment is loath to say this emergency is overblown. They're either scared, they're either genuinely scared of the pandemic, or they're scared of the peer pressure from seeming a skeptic. I think we need some judges to say, all right, you've had 11 months for your 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and now we're just out of control on the civil liberties side. But alas, I haven't seen that judge yet. Bill Howie, $5. Gab CEO Andrew Torba, with 2.7 million international Gab followers, posted the pastors jailing. Canada's shame is going global. By the way, Rebel should join Gab. I think we are on Gab. I don't know. I was on Glenn Beck's show the other day on Pastor James, and today James Kitchen, Pastor James's lawyer, was on Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck has one of the largest radio shows in America, so I would imagine that got heard a lot. Can we check? How's our free? Is it freepastorjames.com? Is that the website we had there? We had 3,705 signatures when we checked half an hour ago. I'd love to see how we're doing now. 3796. Oh, all right, we only had 91 new signatures. Let's see if we can get that up. I don't know why I went on a 10-minute tear about Tamerlane and Mao Zedong and the Red Army. Don't know why I did that, other than to say we denazified the world after the Holocaust and the Second World War, but we did not eradicate communism morally or as an ideology after the fall of the Berlin Wall. I guess that's what I'm saying. I guess that's what my point there. I also wanted to talk about Tamerlane because it's such a fascinating, terrifying figure. I wonder if Count Dankula will ever do a Mad Lads about Tamerlane. I'd be interested to see that. Michelle Linebacker, 50 Swiss francs. Many Canadians living in Switzerland are appalled at what's going on with COVID jails and lockdown lunacy in Canada. Thanks for the quality reporting. Well, thank you for that. We're going to keep doing it, I'll tell you that. Grown Up Trunks, $10. I'm running Ottawa VCon 2021 to help the community. We are being canceled because people don't like our guest. What's the best way to get a reach you to tell our story? Well, I don't know what Ottawa VCon 2021 is. I don't know what community you mean. I don't know what it means to be canceled, so I apologize. I simply don't have the facts. But if you want to tell us very concisely, you can send an email to tips@rebelnews.com, and I beg you, be concise. Share Family, $5. Can we talk about the official opposition in Alberta? Rachel Notley stating that COVID freedom protesters in Edmonton are white supremacists. Yeah, I mean, that's embarrassing for her to say. I think she calls anyone she doesn't like a white supremacist. That's sort of the new move of the left. Call everyone violent, white supremacist, extremist, and get them deplatformed and banned, and we got to stop that. And it's not true that they're white supremacists. I mean, I don't know every single person who's a protester, but simply calling skeptics who believe in civil liberties Nazis or whatever, it devalues the term, doesn't it? Once upon a time, the left believed in civil rights. I don't know what happened to them. Bracket for $5, I have a riddle. If Christians choose a celestial dictatorship, while the rest of society chooses CCP-style dictatorship, which one is morally right? Well, that's the thing. I'm not a Christian, let alone a Christian scholar, but Jesus did have his kingdom, which is different than the secular kingdom on earth, and Christians often lost the battles in the earthly world. But the whole promise of Christianity, I think, is that there's a world to come that's paradise, I think. I mean, I don't want to start opining on Christianity because I'll get it wrong. Paul Williamson, $5. I never thought the lives of others would become a reality in Canada. COVID-19 has provided the perfect excuse to trample people's rights. Oh, exactly. The snitching is so gross. And people are proud of their snitching. They take a selfie video of themselves scolding someone in Costco for not wearing a mask, and they post it. Remember that guy who went through the Chick-fil-A? Remember that guy? And he scolded the Chick-fil-A. Do you know what I'm talking about? You want to grab that for 30 seconds? This was when cancel culture, I'm going to guess this is 5 years ago now. Some guy who was really mad at Chick-fil-A thought he would go to the drive-thru and take it out on the young lady who was working at the drive-thru, who had nothing to do with Chick-fil-A policy, who seemed like a really sweet young lady. And this guy filmed himself berating her and posted it to the internet thinking he looked like a hero. And his big move was, I'm only ordering a glass of water because that costs Chick-fil-A, 5 cents, and ha ha ha. And he came, and I just want to show you this because it's amazing. He tried to get her canceled. He ended up canceling himself. But the whole snitch, look at me snitching, I'm snitching.
I'm next to 9.
I don't even think he'd get fired for that now because the entire world is a snitch. Here, take a look.
I also see like a group of 30 college-age students over there. I'm wondering if they're doing a sit-in. I'm so excited I might just join them. But let's see what happens with my free water, and I think I might just say a few words too. Let's see. Been a long line. There's a long line of cars too. I don't know if you can see, but it's people have to have their Chick-fil-A anti-gay breakfast sandwich. Always tastes better when it's full of hate. Yeah, love it. Come on, I want my free water. Come on. I really hope those students over there are gonna do a sit-in. I think they are. It just makes sense. Here I go. Hey, how you doing?
Fine.
Good. Is this my free water?
It is?
Awesome. You know why I'm getting the free water, right?
I do not.
Because Chick-fil-A is a hateful corporation.
I disagree.
I know,
we
but
don't treat any of our customers differently. We don't.
I know, but you guys,
discriminate
but the
entirely.
corporation gives money to hate groups. Hate groups. Just because people
I'm
want to
staying
kiss
neutral
another
on
guy.
this subject.
Sorry?
I have to stay neutral on this subject. My personal beliefs
No, I
shouldn't be in the
understand.
workplace.
Yeah, I believe that too. I don't believe
Yeah.
corporations should be giving money to
I'm
hateful
really uncomfortable
groups.
that you're videotaping.
Totally understand. I'll take my water.
Okay. It's my pleasure to serve you always.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm glad that I can take a little bit of money from Chick-fil-A and maybe less money to hate groups.
Well,
Have a great day.
We're always happy to serve every.
I don't know how
guest.
you live with yourself
Anything you
and
need.
work here. I don't understand it. This is a horrible corporation with horrible values.
We're here to
You
serve
deserve
you
better.
in any way that you need.
You deserve better. Rachel deserves better. Okay?
Well, I hope you have a really nice day.
I will. I just did something really good. I feel purposeful. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Okay. I'm a nice guy, by the way, and I'm
You
totally
are.
heterosexual. I'm not a gay in me. I just can't stand the hate, you know? It gotta stop. It's gotta stop, guys.
Well,
Stand up.
Have a nice day.
All right. See you guys.
What do you think of that? Now, I know that's old. I don't know how you can live with yourself, he said to her. She seemed like a really nice young lady, don't you think? I think she was much more patient than I would be. That's everybody. I'm not going to say she looked like she was about to cry, but she looked a little bit like she was emotionally attacked by him, which she was. He doesn't know anything about her, but he said, I don't know how you can live with yourself. Well, I know how, because she's working for a company to pay the bills, and I believe what she says, that Chick-fil-A, it looks like a positive attitude place to, I've been to Chick-fil-A's in Canada, the United States, always has a positive vibe to it. Now, who knows, maybe I'm just a customer, I don't know. But if Chick-fil-A were to fire people based on being gay, they would be out of business very quickly, because that's illegal in both Canada and the United States. He ended, I'm a nice guy. Normally you don't have to tell people you're a nice guy. They either know or they know the opposite. If you are saying I'm a nice guy, maybe there's a chance you know you're not, so you have to say it. I'm totally hetero. That was a funny thing to add too, I thought. He lost his job. People were so appalled by his treatment of that young lady. He lost his job. And you know what? I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. I know I'm supposed to. But the way he treated her, I care more about people he was abusing and people who are canceled by mobs like him. He wanted to lead a mob, and the mob turned on him. But the funny thing is, here we are. What was the date on that? That's probably almost 10 years old, isn't it? 2012, so 9 years ago. iPhones were pretty new. I think the first iPhone came out in like 2010 or something, right? So recording things on your cell phone and putting them up online was still fairly new back then. In those 9 years, what he tried to do to her, and it backfired on him, has become so ubiquitous. The Twitter mobs, the cancel culture mobs, that's not even remarkable anymore. In fact, I see that there's a candidate in Pennsylvania who is, I think, running for Attorney General. Can you Google that? The guy, he's running for Attorney General in Pennsylvania for the Democrats, of course. A couple years ago, he went down to some protest outside of Planned Parenthood. There were some quiet, young Christian girls who were protesting outside an abortion clinic. And this guy went down there and doxed them and harassed them. And he wasn't canceled. In fact, I think he's trying to get promoted. He's running for Attorney General of Pennsylvania. So it shows that what was considered intolerable culturally 9 years ago is now considered a springboard to higher office. Is that coming up? Yeah, that sounds right. I'd love to show the original. Oh, okay. All right. Don't worry about it. I can't remember his name either. The incumbent is Josh Shapiro. The guy who is running against him, I can't remember his name. That's the one. That's the one. Can you find that vid if you can? Because I want to show, you're probably saying this, what are you even talking about again? You're going to talk about China and Tamerlane again? We just watched a video guy 9 years ago try and shame a nice young lady for working at Chick-fil-A, and it blew up in his face, right? And I think that's fine. Fast forward a couple years to this video by Brian Sims, is that what you say his name is? And what date is this video? It's got to be like 2 years ago, right? 3 years ago? Oh, it's just 2 years ago. So I think what you're about to see is the 2019 version of that Chick-fil-A harassment, but far from getting the harasser canceled, he's now looking to use that as a springboard to get into higher office. Remember this? Take a look at this.
Hi everyone, Representative Brian Sims here, and I am outside the Planned Parenthood at southeastern Pennsylvania. Oh, no, they're leaving now. What we've got here is a bunch of protesters. a bunch of pseudo-Christian protesters who've been out here shaming young girls for being here. And so here's the deal. I've got $100 to anybody who will identify any of these three.
So we're
that I'm going
actually
to
here
donate to
just
Planned
praying for the
Parenthood.
babies.
I'm going to donate to Planned Parenthood.
And
So
we
look,
believe that
a
women
bunch of
deserve
white
more.
people standing out in front of a Planned
They
Parenthood,
deserve more.
shaming
I'm
people.
really
There's nothing
sorry.
Christian about what you're doing.
I'm pretty
Nothing
far from
Christian
white.
at all about what you're doing. Hi, nothing Christian or loving or godly about what you're doing. So I've got $100 to anybody who will identify who this. $100. See if you got some friends out here. $100. It'd be easier if you just give me your name and your address.
Rich,
Come on.
Rich Boheinski,
Rich, where you from?
Lansdowne.
Rich, what makes you think that it's your job to tell women what's right for their bodies? And the truth is, I'm not really asking because I don't care. Shame on you. Guys, Planned Parenthood out here faces attacks daily from people like this, from pseudo-Christians saying that they are here to somehow protect their own version of Christianity. So do me a favor. If you've watched this, please consider giving $100 to Planned Parenthood. I'm going to do the same.
Pseudo-Christians, so he's saying they're not even Christians. Bunch of white people, that's a weird thing for a white guy to say. He's asking for people to dox them. If you can identify them, their name, address, he'll pay to dox them. I think some of those kids there were minors. Same energy as the Chick-fil-A guy, right? But he wasn't drummed out of office. Now, Justin corrects me, he's running for lieutenant governor. I said attorney general, I was wrong. That's how far we've gone down the gross path, isn't it? All right, I'm going to get through these super chats. Alberta Separatist, $5. Still no word from Kenny in this either. He should GTFO of Alberta and go back to Ontario when he came from. No offense to Ontario. Shout out to Justin. Well, it's very interesting because Jason Kenney is, I've known Jason for almost 30 years. He's the most sympathetic political leader in Canada towards Christians, and yet he presides over a health officer who's throwing pastors in jail. I saw Dina Hinshaw, the Alberta public health officer, claim the RCMP did. RCMP are accusers and arresters. They do not have the power to sentence someone to jail. That's a lie by Dina Hinshaw. A justice of the peace made the decision, but only because the prosecutor, the Crown prosecutor, directed by the Alberta government, demanded that. The RCMP do not have the power to sentence you to anything. They have the power to arrest you, to take you to a judge, and then for the prosecutor to say, hey judge, here's all my reasons why you should jail this guy. So Dina Hinshaw, the public health officer of Alberta, was lying when she said it was the cops that did it. The cops arrested the man at the instruction of Alberta health officers who were taking Dina Hinshaw's instructions. And the prosecutor asked that he be held. Don't put this on the police. This is a government decision. And I don't think it's working for them. You saw how busy that church was in Edmonton. We didn't show you, I don't think, an inside shot from the Calgary church, much smaller church in Calgary. But I think this is spreading. I think the rebellion is spreading. Ronnie DRZ, $20. Thanks, Ronnie. Skylar Marley, 40 smackers, thank you. Heard about Popcorn Gate in Quebec. Legault is not allowing Guzzo Cinema to sell popcorn. This is a window for Quebec to open up. The leader of the PQ party has already spoken out. We need Rebel on this. Please contact him. I did hear about this, and of course, popcorn, snacks, pop is where movie theaters make most of their money, right? I mean, it's been such a long time since I've been to a movie theater, but let's say you spend $12 on the movie ticket, you're probably spending the same on popcorn. And of course the margins on the popcorn are just huge. So yeah, and the thing about Guzzo Cinema is they probably have enough money to fight this for themselves legally. I don't think something of that size would need our legal support. We are helping people. Can you show contesterlescontraventions.com? I just want to remind our viewers that we have a website en français, and we have signed a contract with a law firm in Quebec to literally take the first 1,000 cases of people who get a ticket. And we've put dozens through already, I don't know the exact count, But here's contester les contraventions. Chaque jour, nous entendons parler de bons citoyens et même des familles qui se font donner des contraventions scandaleuses. Alors nous avons décidé de les contester. That's another way of saying every day we hear terrible stories about good citizens and families who receive outrageous tickets. And grâce au financement participatif, through the good graces of crowdfunding, nous embauché des avocats. Through the good graces of crowdfunding, we have enlisted advocates, lawyers, to go to help Canadians who need to fight their scandalous tickets. And so we're going to do that. Thanks for showing that. So we're not going to help Guzzo Cinema. He can help himself, but we'll handle any ordinary person. And we have. And the law firm is perfectly bilingual, unlike me. Dr. Fry, $20. I feel like communists generally don't get called out for their atrocities by academics like the Nazi rightly have. Good ex-island of Nazinski, a.k.a. Cannibal Island. World didn't find out about that one until the 90s. Well, and I didn't find out about it till right now, so I'll have to look that up. The Hib, $10. Canada Post has been told not to serve people without masks. No exceptions. I emailed tips at Rebel with a link to employees' instructions. I was refused service. Please look into this. Thanks. Okay, I will, because I know for a fact that masks are exempt. People are exempt from masks in every single jurisdiction in Canada for a variety of reasons. The reasons are different by jurisdiction. But that is simply not lawful. That would be like saying we've ordered not to serve people in wheelchairs. Yeah, you can't do that. 16 Pilot AEM 9AT, $5 Nova Scotia for Trump. KCUF Trudeau. Well, listen, that ship has sailed, and I regret that Donald Trump did not win re-election. I think, as Joel Pollak's book outlines, the election was stolen legally, so to speak. It wasn't. It was done in plain sight, in daylight, by changing the rules of voting mere months before the election, in the middle of the campaign, without the legislatures, by going to court and getting these COVID rules to allow mail-in ballots, harvesting of ballots. So I think the stealing was done lawfully months before Election Day through the courts. And I agree with that assessment by Joel Pollak, whose book I think is called Neither Free Nor Fair. Alan Plummer, $5. Notley only stopped wearing her watch with Venezuela's dictator on it after becoming premier of Alberta. Go figure. Actually, it was Che Guevara, a murderer. She wore a Che Guevara watch so she would look at his face 20 times a day. And you're right, she wore that in the legislature. She only stopped wearing it when she became premier. It's super gross. The Hib, $5. Canada Post event, got it. Philippe Revard, $5. Hello, Ezra. Do you see ever having a Quebec correspondent? Maybe a bilingual dude. What's happening here now is unheard of, liberty-wise in the West. Well, Philippe, that's exactly what I'm talking about. If you go to rebelnews.com/careers, we have a number of postings up there. I'm going to add one more. We're looking for someone in Ottawa. We're looking for someone in Montreal. In Montreal, the preference would be to someone who speaks both English and French. The reporting would be in English, but the French skills would be necessary to follow the news in Quebec, to talk to newsmakers, to interview people in French. So yes, if you go to, do you want to show the page, rebelnews.com/careers? And we're looking for, we've done a lot of hiring lately. We've hired 3 people in the last couple of weeks, so we're coming along. As I say again, I just had an application this morning from someone from Montreal I'm going to take a second look at. Yeah, so if you go to rebelnews.com, so interns, Montreal reporter, China affairs reporter, Ottawa-based reporter, content writer and web editor. And I can see that we've taken down a couple because we've already fulfilled them, right? We got the video, we hired 2 new video editors and a couple other positions. Mr. Hammond asks 223, firearms rights or human rights? Well, a firearm is a tool. And it's often a tool connected to property rights and self-defense, your security of the person. Daniel Arsenault, $10, thank you. Alberta Separatist, $2. Ezra, Ima, apply until you hire me. Cheers. Well, the test to work at Rebel News is actually an easy one to do. Maybe not an easy one to pass, but to do it, just, and I say this again, just send in a video of you in action. Just take your phone, throw it on the end of a selfie stick, or even just hold it out like this and blah, 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 blah. Record 90 seconds, give me a look and feel of what you like. Show me what your topic selection is. Show me how you argue, communicate. That'll carry the ball farther down the field than sending in some written applications. Sure, I read the written applications, but we're a video-based entity. You just hold out like literally blobbity blah 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 in your phone like that. Then I'll know a lot better from that if you can do the work than all the written self-attestations in the world. Holy macaroni, Alexei Urshov, $150. Well, isn't that amazing? Thank you very much. Never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion against injustice and lying and greed. If people all over the world would do this, it would change the earth. William Faulkner. Well, Alexei, that's spasiba. Thank you very much for that. And we try to fight for freedom. We try to shine a light on the truth. We try to fight back against injustice. I believe we did all of those things this weekend. And we had a staff meeting this morning, and we rededicated ourselves to doing it continuously. So thank you very much for your super chat. Wesley Smith, $5. I'm having an issue with your store. I've contacted your support team. I haven't heard anything from anyone in 12 days. I really hope you can help. Can you send a note to Sarah and, oh you did, and Andrew, good, thank you. Sorry, Wesley. Daniel Arsenault, $5, thank you. Varying Redbeard, £5. Critical thinking. You bet. Melly B, $5. Did you find out if we have to identify ourselves to police if we're just outside not committing crimes? You know, I did get a long memo on that, and the answer was less positive than I thought, because under various emergency legislation, here's the thing. If a policeman thinks you're committing an offense, but they need that predicate, they need that premise, they need that basis. But they can come up with that basis almost from scratch. You know what, that's not a, let me answer your question this way. I made inquiries, I've received a detailed note back from our in-house counsel here. I skimmed it, I haven't fully digested it, and I don't want to be in a position of giving you legal advice. It comes down to the situation in particular. If a cop just comes right up to you and with no reason says, give me all your info, I don't think that that's legitimate. Trouble is, they can come up with some cockamamie excuse that may justify it for a moment, and if you don't, then they might get you for obstruction. I think police are out of control. I think police chiefs are not reining them in, and so far the courts have not either. I think it comes down to the individual cop, to you, and if there's a camera rolling. I've seen David Menzies at one of these COVID quarantine hotels being asked point blank by the cop for his ID. David refuses. The cop sees the camera there, so he loses his courage. It's just amazing. I think that the camera is protecting us. And so my advice to you really is, if you have an interaction with a cop, record it on your phone. Absolutely. Kevin Allen, $10. I was at Walk for Freedom rally in Edmonton on Saturday with hundreds from around Alberta. Antifa Black Lives Matter showed up and try and drown us out. Later, CTV reported they were there to protest our hatred. Go Rebel. Well, CTV and the mainstream media, it's funny, I was just looking at an article in the Toronto Star that said 52% of people don't trust institutions like the media anymore. And my first instinct is, oh, 48% do? Who are they? That's higher than I thought. But I think one of the reasons is the media, at least when there's a leftist in power like Justin Trudeau, the media serves power, submits to power, it doesn't challenge power. When Donald Trump was in office, the media were jackals. When Stephen Harper was in power, the media were jackals. But the media are lapdogs for Justin Trudeau and lockdownism. So I think that CTV is really losing its credibility, whereas at Rebel News, I think we have more credibility than we ever have, because people know we call it like it is, and they know we don't take a dime from Trudeau or any other government. I really think it matters. How can you take money from Trudeau and report on Trudeau? How can you let your journalists do that? Most journalists in Canada who work for TV stations, radio stations, or newspapers are unionized. Their unions, including the Canadian Media Guild and Unifor, have third-party super PACs that register with Elections Canada, that take their reporters' union dues and spend it on campaigning against the very politicians they're reporting on. So you would have, like my friend David Aiken, he's part of Unifor, so he'll be reporting on, and Justin Trudeau said this, and Aaron O'Toole said that. Okay, thanks. But why isn't there a disclaimer at the end saying, even just on screen, David Aiken is a dues-paying member of, I think he's in Unifor, which has a super PAC designed to defeat Aaron O'Toole and re-elect Justin Trudeau. Like, why would you not disclose that? And if you don't like disclosing that, if you think that's a nuisance, then why are you doing that? Why are you hiding that from your viewers? I'm not picking on David, other than just, I remember having a back and forth with David, and he said, I'm outraged that my union's doing this. But he hasn't, I mean, I read his union constitution and said, well, David, you can call a meeting on this. You just get a few signatures together. How's that going? He never did. Let's catch up here, because it's only 1:01. Let's hurry up here. Skylar Marley, $5 Guzzo needs your coverage. Not legal. He's talking to the cancel culture media. Okay, I hear what you're saying. So you're saying he's not looking for a lawyer. He's looking for an audience. Well, I think I need a reporter in Montreal. Listen, I talked to him from here, but I don't know if he would talk to me. Sneaky Beaver, $5 sent message on Tip's email yesterday at 7 p.m. Some French outlet, Le Soleil, are throwing you under the bus. Thank you, Sneaky Beaver. I did read that. I read their so-called fact check. It wasn't a fact check, was it? It was about Kian's piece about the soldiers returning from the World Military Games in Wuhan, China. And it styled itself as a fact check, but it didn't. It just said, well, I don't believe that, and that's not credible. And what about, like, it didn't actually say we got any facts wrong. It just said they disagreed with us. It was the most pitiful fact check I've ever seen. John Day, $5. If you hire me, I will make sure there are no cookies left in the staff room to tempt you. Well, Justin just says he thinks that's his job. Well, Napoleon said, I think it was Napoleon, that an army travels on its stomach. So you must say, well, Ezra, you've been doing a lot of traveling then. I'm trying to go easy on the cookies. Okay. Wesley Smith, $2. It is Sarah who I am waiting on, unfortunately. Okay, Wesley. Well, okay. Justin says we're on it. Let's get that fixed up for you, Wesley. Thank you for asking for help, and I'm sorry about that. Well, my friends, it is 1:03 p.m., and we didn't even get to most of the stuff here that I wanted to. I don't know why I went on that whole bender about Tamerlane and the Red Army. I just find those things very interesting, and I think it's useful to try and study history. And it's dangerous to study things on your own, because you can make a wrong turn and you can take the wrong lessons from it. And I see that with the homemade legal theories online. You know, you can, if you don't have a guru or a Sherpa or a guide or someone with a little more experience than you, saying, oh yeah, that, well be careful of that, or oh, you made a wrong turn here, you can go a far ways down a wrong road. But that said, I think the internet is still the most wonderful learning tool for the common person ever. And I spend a lot of time learning on the internet in a way that I never would have in the pre-internet era. I mean, you can go to a library, you can buy books, you can get magazines, but just for quickly finding an expert or a purported expert, seeing video and photos and learning, the internet's unrivaled. Now you have to be attentive. But are you not curious about who this Tamerlane is, who killed 5% of the world? Like that, who is he? Who was he? And that's the thing about the internet is you can follow your stream of consciousness. I had never even heard the name Tamerlane until it was one of the Tsarnaev brothers. I said, who's that? Who's he named after? Who's his mama named him after? So I don't know, I just find these things interesting, learning about the brutality of the Red Army. You know, if you were to ask people in North America who beat the Nazis, Justin, what would you say? Who beat the Nazis in World War II? You'd say America and Canada. I think most Americans would say America. Probably most Brits would say them and the Yanks. If you look at D-Day on the Normandy beach, you had 2 American beaches, Omaha and Utah. You had 2 British beaches, Sword and maybe it's only one, and you had Juno Beach with the Canadians. So you might say, oh, and the Australians helped here, and then some New Zealanders, and the whole British. And it's true. And I think America did have an enormous role to play. But remember, they didn't join till after Pearl Harbor. That was December 7th, 1941. Now, they had the Lend-Lease Agreement. By the way, there's a nice movie out there with Tom Hanks about the Merchant Marine until Pearl Harbor. What's that movie? Do you know the one? It's on Apple TV. Tom Hanks made a new movie. Darn it, I can't remember what it's called. Greystone or Greyhound. I think it's called Greyhound. Can you throw some viz on the screen? I really recommend the movie. It's a very exciting movie. It's about an American naval officer who's escorting an American convoy of men and materiel. Yeah, Greyhound. Very exciting. So 1940. So this is after Pearl Harbor. So the war is on. Basically, Tom Hanks is a captain whose job is to, there's the Nazi wolf pack, that's what they called the U-boats. Have you seen that movie? I think it's free if you have Apple something. You know, it's it's sort of cool effects, as you can see. There's a bit of drama there. Because when these ships set off from the eastern seaboard of America, they had the cover of land-based aircraft for a few hundred miles. And then when they were coming close to the UK, you see that airplane there. But what about that middle of the Atlantic that was too far from shore for any air support? Because so the U-boats would hunt them down and try and sink the convoy ships, try and sink the escorts. It was a very dramatic movie, and it really showed hour by hour they're trying to get across the sea as fast as possible, and what if one ship in the convoy was going slow? So obviously the Americans played a large role, but remember, the Americans didn't really join in full force till, let's call it 1942. They were supplying men and material before then. But here's the thing, Justin. In terms of sheer number of lives lost, the Red Army defeated the Nazis. In terms of the number of tanks, the number of men, the number of planes, the number of artillery pieces, and most definitely the number of casualties, the Red Army and General Zhukov. You know, and obviously in the Cold War, the West wanted the glory, the Soviet Union was our enemy, but they sent more men into the meat grinder than anyone else. And I think we can acknowledge that all countries in the Allies lifted their load. Australia, Canada, disproportionately so. The United States, the Brits, obviously. You know, people mock the French, but the French paid a heavy price when they were defeated so quickly. It was the Red Army. Can you call him Zhukov? Z-H-U-K-O-V. Zhukov, I think I'm pronouncing it. He was the bulldozer, the steamroller that, you know, Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme, Georgy Zhukov. Look at that guy. Look at that guy. What do you think he's like? Minister of Defense of the Soviet Union. That's what his last job was in the 50s. But look what he did in the 30s and 40s. Scroll down a bit. What was his title? Nicknames, Marshal of Victory. He was in the Imperial Russian Army, then the Soviet Red Army. Look at all those wars he fought in. Scroll down again. Zhukov. Conscripted into the Imperial Army. Scroll down more. He outlasted Stalin. He became friends with Eisenhower, Eastern Front of World War II. Yeah, scroll down. Now this is Wikipedia, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But let me read from here. Yeah. So this is Rokossovsky's comments in an official report on Zhukov's character. I don't even know who Rokossovsky is. A rivalry with Zhukov. He has a strong will, decisive and firm, often demonstrates initiative and skillfully applies it, disciplined, demanding and persistent in his demands, a somewhat ungracious and not sufficiently sympathetic person, rather stubborn, painfully proud, in professional terms well-trained, broadly experienced as a military leader, absolutely cannot be used in staff or teaching jobs because constitutionally he hates them. Would you say, Justin, that is the perfect man for the task he was given? And you know, I know it's a comedy, but the Death of Stalin, can you call me up that where Zhukov makes his appearance? And the funny thing is, in the movie The Death of Stalin, Zhukov has a Yorkshire accent. The actor playing him, I can't remember his name. It's an absurd movie, you know, play Zhukov with that northern British accent. But for some way it works. And he's the most charismatic person in that movie. Here, let's give me a little bit of Zhukov. There he is.
Sad day, soldier. Yes, sir. Sad day. Eyes on off. You handsome devil. Stick you in a frock. I'd fucking ride you around myself.
I will take that as a compliment.
Yeah, don't. Right. What's a war hero got to do? Get some lubrication around here.
Generalissimo.
There he is, eh? A great man. Seen a lot of death, but that is a loss. Tell me something. Why is the army been replaced by the NKVD all over Moscow? I mean, I'm smiling, but I am very fucking furious.
Perhaps this is a good time for Comrade Udina to go and prepare those precious fingers.
Yes, one moment, General. I will properly catch up with you this evening.
I'm looking forward to it.
You know, obviously it's a drama, it's a comedy, but I think it was appropriate to give that man the air that he had there. Obviously the communists were an evil force, but as you can see, Zhukov was more a military man than an ideologue, I think. He was a career soldier. He was in the Imperial Army. He was in World War I, World War II, many wars. He outlasted Stalin. They killed everything in sight, and they treated men like tissues to be discarded. The history of Russia is a history of blood. And we showed you the other day the percentage of Russians born, I think, in 1927. Russian men who lived to adulthood was less than half. It was such a bloody battle. All right, it's 1:14. A couple more super chats. Let me just get to them. I recommend, have you seen that one? The Death of Stalin? I know I'm giving you a lot of homework watching movies. I hear a movie called Death of Stalin. I think, I don't want to watch it. I'm not interested in a documentary. I'm not interested in eating my spinach. but it's a dark comedy. It's a black comedy. It was interesting. The characters were interesting. Like they're having comedians, like Steve Buscemi there was playing Khrushchev. He did a good job. It was a good movie. And I think, we talked earlier today about that German film, The Lives of Others. That was not a comedy. That was a drama that I told you how it would make you feel. Angry, frustrated. This tries to get you to chuckle because it takes you through one of the worst places and worst times in the world. The movie's called The Death of Stalin. So it's right, the moments until he dies, when he dies, how they handle his death, what happens afterwards, the succession. One of the most brutal men of all time, less so than Mao or Tamerlane, but brutal. And the brutality of Stalin and how he punished people. And Beria, the head of the... did you hear that when Zhukov said, why is the Red Army being replaced by the NKVD? That's like the secret police. There were a lot of those issues there. Who would succeed Stalin? Would he be a totalitarian, brutal torturer in the same vein, or would there be some sort of liberalization? Would there be some sort of reform? So although there's a lot of comedy and dramatization, it's loosely based on the order of events there. Worth watching. The absurdity of the situation. I know it's a black comedy, but I don't think I laughed the whole time. I think I just sort of went, huh, huh, because you need the comedy, like you squeeze a lemon on fish to get rid of the fishiness. You need a little bit of comedy. If you're going to watch a movie about Stalin and what he did, you need a little bit of comedy there. You're not going to be able to, it's not going to be palatable. Ray W., 10 pounds, would you trust Boris Root out of lockdown? If you're talking about Boris Johnson, I'd say I don't trust Boris Johnson on anything. I'm sorry, not a thing. Not a damn thing. Superior Textiles, $100. That's amazing. Thank you very much. I don't see a super chat there, but I'm grateful for the support. Ela Varma, $5. Tamerlane killed millions of Hindus in India. He ordered a mountain of their skulls be made, which was visible for miles. Yes, I've, and we don't know what's apocryphal and what is a myth or what is literally true. I don't know if you could have a pile of skulls visible for miles, but maybe you could. He was the most brutal man who ever lived. The most brutal man who ever lived. To kill 5% of the world. I was on the treadmill the other day, and I make the time go by watching a movie. And I was watching Apocalypto. You ever seen Apocalypto? I'm giving you so many, you know what, Apocalypto could be called 1491. It was about the world in Central America right before the Spanish arrived. And it showed the rivalry, the warring tribes, the civil wars, and it showed, which I think was Tenochtitlan, the capital, what that would have looked like right before the Europeans arrived. Mel Gibson was the producer of that movie. Exquisite, so violent. It is the most, because they showed the sacrifice. You know those pyramids? You ever been to Mexico or down there? You ever see those pyramids down there? They did sacrifices on those. So Mel Gibson, give me some B-roll. So Mel Gibson says, what would life have been like if you had a death cult running a world that believed in sacrificing live people to a sun god, Kukulkan? What would life have been like? What would the big city have been like? that the most exciting movie trailer you've ever seen in your life? What do you think of that, Justin? Does it look too violent? Yeah, you know what? It is completely spoken in whatever that ancient language is. It's not Spanish. It is a colonial language, some indigenous language. Those actors, incredible, obviously none of them famous in Hollywood. Mel Gibson made the movie Passion of the Christ, not a word of English in it. It's Latin, Greek, Aramaic. And then he makes this movie, Apocalypto, not a word of English, no actors you ever heard of before. Obviously, I'm not on the treadmill for 2 full hours, so I'm only an hour and a half into this thing. I watch it in chunks. They have a scene where they capture these tribesmen in the jungle, right? They lead them to the big city, Tenochtitlan, and they sacrifice them to the sun god. And Mel Gibson says, what was that like? What would that have looked like? And he shows you. That's what's so incredible about the Passion of the Christ. What would it look like to have a man pull his cross down the road, be nailed to it, be scourged, wear a crown of thorns? Like, what would that actually look like with your eyes? The word passion comes from the Latin for torture. Like it wasn't just, oh, haha, a nail went through. It was the most brutal torture. And Mel Gibson says, let's not sanitize it, let's look at it. And by the way, in the Passion of the Christ, there's this spooky devil, like dark angel character that walks through it. And he has that same conceit. You saw that little girl in Apocalypto there? She had the same prophetic, like she was the prophecy. It was a terrifying, this little girl with the prophecy. So Mel Gibson says, and I'm not going to give away the last minute of the movie, but you watch the whole movie and the last minute is the payoff. You can't even believe it. And the last minute makes you think, now I know why Mel Gibson just gave me the last 2 hours. Now, it's beautiful. It's beautiful and horrific and colorful and shocking. It's like nothing else you're going to see in Hollywood. Am I right? Like that is so different than anything you've ever seen. Have you ever even seen a movie based in, I think that was Aztec? Have you, but why not, right? I mean, you've got, Indiana Jones and the Crystal something, right? But that was just, okay, that was just fun. Mel Gibson tried to say, well, what would it have actually been like in Tenochtitlan? I think that's how you say it. Unbelievable. Is anyone still watching? Got a few people here still? Quite a few? I'm shocked. People are still watching. All right, let's get out of here. Oh, yeah. The name of the name of today's live stream is Being Offensive is an Offense. And look at this. Being offensive is an offense. And those are real cops. And I think those cops are from, and look at that, they're doing that in the Queen's name. Do you see that? ER, Elizabeth Regina, Queen Elizabeth. How dare you? She would never say that. Being offensive is an offense. And can you go, there's another couple of shots of this where we can read. They're basically saying, if someone's mean to you, report it to the police and we will prosecute them. Do you have any other viz? I know Paul Joseph Watson did a little story on this at summit.news. That's a real truck. And those are real cops who are going out and about and saying, if someone has offended you, tell us and we'll prosecute them, we'll arrest them. This is Paul's story on the subject. Merseyside police were forced to respond after officers took part in an electronic ad campaign outside a supermarket, which claimed being offensive is an offense, with authorities later clarifying that it's not in fact an offense. Over the weekend, the mobile electronic billboard was parked outside an Asda supermarket for a PR campaign. Being offensive is an offense, states the ad, which features a police badge superimposed on an LGBT rainbow flag. Merseyside Police stand with and support the LGBTQI plus community. Hey, where's the number 2, you bigots? LGBTQI plus? Where's the 2? You bigots! You bigots! I'm wearing 4 masks. You're only wearing 3, you bigot. We will not tolerate hate crime on any level. Come and speak to Team Beb? What's that? States the text on the ad. Being offensive. The billboard received a huge backlash, with many people pointing out that it is, in fact, not a criminal offense to be offensive. Merseyside Police were forced to later clarify in a statement that being offensive is not in itself an offense. And then there's a statement from the superintendent, Martin Earl, regarding a message on an advent and our social media channel. Now click on that. I don't know if we can read it. It's a pretty small font. Pump it up if you can. But yeah, click on that and then, yeah. We would like to clarify that being offensive is not in itself an offense. A message on an advert, blah, blah, blah. I'm skipping now. Our hate crime coordinators draw on a wealth of experience and expertise to provide effective and, above all, it's too small, I can't really read it here, but basically, after saying being offensive is not an offense, then they go on and on and on about how they, in fact, will prosecute, quote, hate, which is a human emotion. So they regret nothing. They regret nothing other than they used a stupid line, being offensive is an offense. They take nothing back other than that slogan. They do intend to prosecute you for being offensive. They just say if you're hateful, not offensive. And I'm not sure what the legal difference is, if at all. So that would fit right in to the lives of others in terms of snitching and being woke and heavy times. It's 1:28. We've gone super long. Don't mind me. I just wanted to tell you about every single movie that's on my mind. I should report back to you that the other day when we were talking to someone who doubted the moon landings, I remembered that movie Apollo 11, and I suggested it to Justin, who watched it over the weekend, and he came back with rave reviews. Give me one line. What's your one-line takeaway if I had to encourage people to see Apollo 11? What would you say? Awe-inspiring. You know what? I think you're right, actually. It really was awe-inspiring, encouraging, exhilarating. It was an amazing movie. It made him, Justin says, it made me jealous of the time. That's exactly right. It looked like for one moment anything was possible in the world. And all of America, if not the world, was united in a moment of high achievement. And it wasn't a self-hating moment. It wasn't an anti-patriotic moment. And people could share that moment of humanity as humanity left the earth and landed on the moon for the first time. Something that countless generations had only dreamed of and America mastered. It is a great movie. Apollo 11. Justin, I'm not assigning you any of these other movies to watch. I think Death of Stalin is what they would call a cult classic, which is another way of saying it's an acquired taste. It's not everybody's taste. But I know you have a strong sense of humor. You might find it funny. You might enjoy seeing guys like Steve Buscemi playing a deadly role. You might enjoy that. And I forget the name of the actor who did Zhukov. He was a force. Like I think that he was well cast. The fact that he kept his Yorkshire accent makes me laugh. But you got to admit, those pictures of Zhukov from Wikipedia were pretty badass. What else? Apocalypto. Maybe I'm focusing too much on the violence. There was some extreme violence, but I do believe that's what life was like in the Aztec Empire, which had human sacrifice. I believe that is part of Mel Gibson's point. And if you watch till the end and think about that last minute, just think about it. Why did Mel Gibson end it that way? all of a sudden the previous 2 hours you'll change it. You know what? He's not a dummy, that Mel Gibson. He knows how to tell a story. All right, my friends, it's 1:30, and we've talked before about, obviously we talked before about the lives of others, which is, well, won an Oscar, let me put it that way. So cinematographically, just in terms of the art of storytelling and filmmaking, it is a wonderful movie. But wonderful sounds positive and peppy and happy, and is not that. It is a heartbreaking movie that speaks to life under Soviet domination, that Eastern Europe was under for 70 plus years, and that in some ways we're slouching back to now. Any more super chats? No. All right, everybody. Thanks a million for joining. One last shout out to our super duper chatters. Superior Textiles, thank you. And Alexei Urshov, thank you. I'm going to go. I got other things to do, but I don't want to just do movie reviews and just rambles. But sometimes let me tell you, each of the movies we talked about today it's not just an entertainment. I believe there's a lesson or a reminder, and these days, with so many of our other recreations shut down, maybe watching movies is something we're all doing more of. I think in my case, that's for sure true. Do we have a dog video today? We do. As you know, I like to end with a dog video curated by Justin. I do not see these dog videos before we put it up, so I see them for the first time along with you. So I'll say goodbye today. I'm doing a show tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to talk about a new study by Edelman that shows that 52% of people don't trust the media. I'll go deep on that. I mentioned that earlier in the show. Let me say goodbye now and leave you with this dog video.